Hi guys, what's up and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about every single Saw movie and ranking them from worst to best. Before I get started, I just wanted to say that if you're new here, hi, I'm Jennifer, and I've recently been seeing all of the Saw movies, and it's now time for me to sit down and rank them. And before I get started, I just wanted to say, please go down in the comment section and let me know your Saw ranking, because I would love to hear that. And first, I'm going to just talk about the franchise as a whole, and then I'm going to go in and talk about my number 9 all the way until my number 1. And just some things about the franchise. I just wanted to say that this is really my first time seeing the entire franchise from start to finish as a whole, because I had originally seen the first and the second, but I didn't really remember much because it had been such a long time, so I gave those a rewatch and I watched all of the other ones. This is a franchise that I'm not the biggest fan of, so I don't know if any diehard Saw fans are gonna find my ranking a bit weird. I don't know what the average ranking is, honestly, because I'm pretty new to the franchise, and honestly this is probably gonna be the last time that I really watch a lot of these. Only maybe a couple ones, the ones at the top are ones that I would be willing to rewatch, but I'm just not a fan of the franchise. I love horror, and this is definitely one that has been on the top of my list for me to watch because it's one of the most iconic franchises in horror. But I just think in the Saw franchise there's mostly bad than there is good, unfortunately, and a lot of it feels very repetitive. But I will say that all of these movies kept me entertained, and I really liked how all of them had a connected storyline, which I thought was pretty interesting because it made it more exciting to watch the next one, because it would end and the next one would pick up right where the last one started. So that was a lot of fun. I love when movies do that, but I just feel like personally these aren't really my type of movies, so I just wanted to get that out there before I started talking about all of the other ones. Coming in number 9 is Saw 3D. So this was supposed to be one of the final ones. It is also known as the final chapter. It was supposed to end this big story, and the main reason it's at the lowest point for me is because I don't think it really finishes a storyline. It kind of ends in a way that you think there's gonna be more, but then there isn't more, because I feel like they rushed so much at the end of this one. I think the twist in this one is the most obvious out of all of them, and this character that's revealed at the end literally comes into the movie and he's literally hiding in the shadows, and like it just looks like he's suspicious. It just looks like he's super suspicious. I thought it was a pretty obvious twist, and I'm not even a fan of it, and the motivations are weak, and to me it ruins a perfectly good character. I'm just gonna say that. They should have just left that character how that character was instead of dragging him back into this movie, because it just didn't make any sense. Also, the opening scene for this one is my least favorite out of all of them. It has nothing to do with the other storylines. It was just there for like shock, I guess, and extra gore. I just think this movie looks the worst in visual effects because the gore is so unrealistic, because the blood is so pink. It's like such a weird color for blood, and it just doesn't look good, and it takes you out of the traps. I am a horror fan, and although I don't like gore, I still think that the gore aspects of these movies are pretty good, and for some movies it really adds a lot to it, and I think in this one it took it away completely. It just made the scenes really not nice, although I do think there were some interesting traps in this one. The visual effects just ruined it for me. And the really big reason why this one is down there is because I didn't really care about what was happening in the trap sequences. You have this character who has made a living selling books and talking about his story to people, that he survived Jigsaw's traps, but in reality he never did that. It was all just a lie, but it didn't really connect to the overall big storyline. And like, thinking that this movie is supposed to end something, I think they would have probably made the central character and the traps a little bit more interesting, or I guess a little bit more connected to the main storyline. I just feel like it didn't go together, and random things were happening all of the time that I'm like, how does this even connect? I don't understand how this works. I'm not a big fan of Hoffman. I'm just gonna say that off the bat, because I think a lot of my problems with the movies come with Hoffman. I just hate seeing him beat people that are supposed to know more than him, like beat a bunch of police officers. Like, he literally comes into this room, Hoffman just beats everybody. It makes no sense. Like, he comes in there and every single cop just ends up dead. Like, I know it's a movie and there's like dumb movie logic, but it just bothers me. It bothers me so much, and that's why this one is in last place, because I feel like so much of it is so forgettable. I don't like the way it's filmed. I don't like the way the story resolves. I think it's honestly pretty stupid. Moving on to number 8 is Saw 5. And this one and Saw 3D are pretty interchangeable. I'm gonna be honest, I was debating between one or the other, but the reason this one is above Saw 3D is because Strom is in this movie, and I enjoyed seeing him on screen. I thought he was a pretty good character. Nothing crazy, because we literally don't know much about him. But a lot of this movie is basically Strom and Hoffman going off at each other, because Strom is kind of like seeing that Hoffman is kind of, you know, suspicious, and then Hoffman is obviously noticing that, so they're just going off each other. And I've already said this, I don't like Hoffman as a character, so watching a movie centralized around Hoffman, I'm just not a fan. And in this movie, we get some backstory on Hoffman and why he's involved in everything, and I honestly felt that this movie was extremely unnecessary, because the information that we get here, which is not that much information if I'm being honest, could easily have been put in Saw 4 to give us more information, because I feel like so much happened in this movie, and I feel like so much is pointless. The traps are pretty interesting in this one, but again, they don't really have anything to do with the main storyline. You have these group of people, and basically at the end they realize that if they had all worked together, they would have all survived, and it would have made the final trap, which was them taking out blood, a lot easier. But alas, the movie's trying to say that like people are selfish. These people are so selfish, and they only think about themselves, and they ruin themselves by doing that, which is an interesting message to have. I won't lie, I enjoy that. But again, it didn't have anything to do with the main storyline. Like, I just didn't see that connection that I think is really important to have. It is interesting when we get flashbacks that connect to other movies, and we get to understand that a little bit more. But again, I just think this movie was so unnecessary, and that's why it's in this place, because I feel like it's the one that is supposed to be giving us a lot of information, and in one way it does. But all of the information that was given here could have easily been put in another movie, in the previous movie, and it would have made this franchise seem less redundant. Coming in number 7 is, unfortunately, Spiral. Yeah, Spiral is this low on the list. I have an entire review up if you guys want to hear my full in-depth thoughts, but just to get some little bullet points here. The acting was not my favorite. The reveal was pretty obvious. The movie has a very redundant and repetitive structure that I didn't like. I thought the traps were terrible. They happened way too fast, and I think it completely forgot what the Saw traps are supposed to be doing. It just was there to kill people, which obviously in Saw that happens a lot, but if you see the Saw movies, you realize that it's not just about killing people. Jigsaw wants something out of it, and I think in this case that didn't happen at all. And for that reason, it's just a number 7. I just honestly don't think I'm ever going to rewatch this movie. I also don't think it looked that good. Genuinely, other Saw movies that are older looked better in my opinion. I didn't like the lighting. I didn't like the way it was filmed. I'm just really not a fan of this movie at all. I guess if I have to give it a positive, I think the commentary that they tried to have here was interesting and was good. I wish they would have taken some elements from other Saw movies that are great and tied it into this one, because you could definitely get elements from other movies and still try to make it unique. I think this movie just tried too much to try to be unique, and it didn't work in their favor. And coming in number 6 is Saw 4. I was interested in Riggs' character, like I actually was rooting for him, but this movie is so repetitive. Literally a really crazy death scene happens, which I will say I think the traps here are really good, but all of that happens, right? Then literally 5 seconds after, the cops show up. Then the next scene is a trap happening. Then 5 seconds after we saw that trap, the cops show up, and it's like, you guys are getting there right after the person has died. Maybe hurry it up a bit, like, and you could solve the crime faster. It just made it so annoying and frustrating, because it was that same pattern over and over again. Death, cop shows up, death, cop shows up. I will say though, the plot for this one was engaging, and I think this one is pretty watchable. Like, I could see myself watching this one again, because I liked seeing Rig go through all of like sets that he had. But even then, there's so many plot holes onto how anything even happened, and this one has the twist at the end that starts the whole Hoffman thing. And this is why I say that I think they could have easily put what happened in Saw 5 in the backstory that we got in this movie, because at the end, Hoffman stands up and then I feel like there they could have put the backstory, and then the movie could have ended, and I think it would have been a better movie, and Saw 5 wouldn't have happened, and I would have been very happy. Also, again, the whole Hoffman thing, I've said this before, but here's where it starts, so I'm gonna say it again. It's super repetitive of what happened in Saw 2, because it's literally kind of really similar. Somebody is in the traps, and you think they're really being hurt by somebody else, but in reality, they aren't being hurt by somebody else because they're doing it themselves. So repetitive, and I don't know why they keep doing that, because it worked once. It doesn't work every single time you do that. Then coming in at number 5 is Jigsaw. This is the one I was the most excited for, because I had really wanted to watch this movie when it came out, but I didn't want to watch the Saw movies before then, and then I never ended up watching this one. This one is so bland. I didn't even have the energy to write a Letterboxd review for this one. I just wrote, awesome twist, but extremely bland. I like the twist in this one. I think it's cool because it surprised me a lot. I genuinely thought John Kramer was still alive, and I was even already questioning and kind of judging the movie, saying, really, you guys are gonna milk it out this much and make John Kramer be alive? But I liked the twist, and I think it honestly saved the movie, but it didn't fully save it into making this movie good because I don't think the movie itself is good. It's just you have these characters that you don't know anything about and you haven't seen them before, and I feel like the movie doesn't do a good job of making them likable. This movie focuses more on the people at the morgue rather than the police officer, so it's a little bit different because usually these movies kind of feel like a Criminal Minds episode with traps and stuff, and I was excited to see where it would go, but I didn't like the main girl. I don't even remember her name, and the guy I didn't like either. I just didn't care about these people. And then when the twist happened, I was shocked, but it was more because of what they did with John Kramer than it was about who it ended up being. Because I feel like to make a good twist, I have to know the character good enough, and I didn't really know the character good enough to be shocked. But I think the way the movie's edited and told is interesting. You know, like it being in the past and we not knowing anything about that. I think that was pretty cool and interesting. I just think this movie is really boring in the sense that I don't think it has a specific style. Even though I've criticized the hell out of these movies, like Saw 4, Saw 5, Saw 3D, they have something about them that makes it unique. They have that greenish filter on it. They have some grain. They have transitions. But this one just feels very like normal, and I don't think it's really what fits this franchise. I think it's bland. The reason it's higher than the other ones though is because the twist genuinely shocked me and I didn't guess it whatsoever, and I think the twist was cool enough, but it still wasn't perfect. Then coming in number 4 is Saw 2. And Saw 2 is pretty entertaining, but it's not as good as the first movie, but it doesn't mean that it's a terrible movie either. I think this one is one of the better ones. Obviously it's in the upper half of this list, but the traps here are pretty good. There's a lot of them that are crazy, and this is really the first Saw movie to introduce us to these mazes, because in the first Saw it was in a contained space, but here we see these characters go around the house, and I thought the plot was pretty engaging. It felt like I, as an audience member, was also going with them through this journey, but it also does start a trend that I don't like about Saw movies, where it kind of chooses traps and gore over story. I felt like at times they just threw in traps and they threw in gore, but I was like, where's the storyline? Where's the character development that I like to see in movies? And I think this one didn't really have much of that. And I also felt like most characters were really useless, especially the police department in this movie. Like, so stupid. And again, movies do this all of the time, but it doesn't mean that I still can't criticize it because it bothers me as an audience member. But this movie has a really great third act because there were so much crazy stuff happening and so many different twists all at once, and I really like Amanda as a character. I think she's super interesting, and I think here she really shines, and the twist obviously has to do with her, and there's more twists in this one. This one is like one of those movies where there's a twist and then you're like, okay, whoa, that's crazy, and then something else happens and it just keeps going crazy. And this movie was filmed pretty cool. There were some cool shots, and I liked the editing and the transitions in this movie, and I just liked the way the movie looked. I feel like it had a really distinct look to it that is very early 2000s horror, which I really like. But yeah, this one's like pretty enjoyable and entertaining, but it's not as good as the top 3 in my opinion. Although looking now at what I'd have as number 3, this one and number 3 could also be interchangeable. Coming in number 3 is Saw 6. I was really surprised to really enjoy this one because I hadn't been enjoying the movies after Saw 3, to be honest, but I thought this one was pretty enjoyable. I'm reading my notes from when I watched the movie, and I think it wrapped up the killer storyline well. Even though I wasn't a huge fan of his character in other movies, I liked how it was wrapped up here, but it wasn't, because then in Saw 7 or Saw 3D, they continue it. For what this movie is, I like the way Hoffman's story is wrapped up. This one has a pretty good ending, and this one has some pretty interesting commentary, which I really liked. It had a lot of commentary about healthcare. There were some questionable decisions by characters inside the Saw traps, where I'm like, really, you're just as bad as the person you hate the most. And I just really liked the traps in this movie. I liked the carousel trap. That one was extremely crazy, and it also has the one where like whoever gives the most flesh survives. But I personally liked the subtle twist on it about whose game this really was about. I thought that was interesting, and yeah, I just honestly liked this movie. And the reason it's higher than 2 is because I'd rather watch this one than 2 for some reason. I almost forgot to mention that in Saw 6 we get interactions between Hoffman and Amanda, and I loved those scenes. I wish we would have gotten more of that, and that whole twist was extremely interesting. It's like honestly one of my favorite scenes in the entire Saw franchise, so I just had to mention that. Coming in at number 2 is a really great Saw entry, Saw 3. This movie is genuinely really good in my opinion, and the third act of this movie is crazy. So many reveals happen, so much happens. We get to understand so much at the end of Saw 3, and it literally left me with my mouth wide open because I was like, wow, I did not expect this movie to go in this direction whatsoever. And I really like Amanda in this movie. I'm a huge fan of her character. I just just talked about one of my favorite aspects of Saw 6, and it's really interesting knowing what happens in Saw 6, how it connects to certain scenes. I like the characters in this movie, and I also like the acting in this movie a lot too, because I feel like in some of them the acting is not that good, but I think in this one it's very believable and real, especially from Lynn's character. And this one is one of the goriest in my opinion, and the traps are crazy in this one. And I saw the unrated version. I have it back here. This one was very gory. Like, I feel like everything looked extremely believable and realistic, and for coming out in 2006, it has aged really well, which I think is really good. And this movie is such a perfect ending to the first Saw and the second Saw, and I wish it really would have stopped here, because I think what they did here was really good and had a lot of impact, because it really kind of showed us what John Kramer wanted out of this game, because we see that especially with Amanda. And this movie is one of the longest. I think it actually is the longest Saw movie, and I think it needed to be as long as it was to get all the information we needed, because this movie is showing us that the game is about many different people, because we have Amanda's game, but then we also have Jeff's game, and then you don't even know what winning in this game means. I think this movie really showed us that, which I think is something really horrifying in these traps, because it's like, how do you really win these games? Because you might think you won, but in reality you didn't. It's definitely grown on me the more I think about it, because when I started watching it, I thought it would be a little bit boring, because I just thought it was gonna be this woman trying to save John Kramer's life, but no, it was super interesting. I really enjoyed it, and that scene with the brain surgery was crazy and so disgusting. But you guys already know what's in first place if you guys have been doing process of elimination. Coming in first place is the original Saw. I just really love this movie, and maybe it's basic for it to be a number one, but I think it's the best. I think what James Wan did here was just near perfect. The traps aren't as crazy as the other ones. This one is more laid back when you think about it, because so many of the other ones are just more horrifying than this one, but I still love the simplicity that this one has, because I'm much more of a bigger fan of story over gore, and I think this movie understands that. I also really like her two characters that we're with the entire time, and for the most part this movie takes place in one location, because it obviously switches, because we get to know backstory and flashbacks, and we get to see other people outside of where Adam and Dr. Gordon are. But when we are with them, I think it's impressive what James Wan was able to do, and Leigh Whannell as well. I just really think what they did, just impressive. And also just like the fact that it was such a low budget and it was fantastic, it just shows a lot. I also think the acting at some points could be a little bit bad. I still think it was pretty believable in their fears, and I genuinely feared for these characters, and the twist at the end is just great. I just recently did a video talking about my top 10 horror endings, and I believe it was Sledgehammer Horror. Make sure to check out his channel if you guys haven't checked out his channel, by the way. I'll link it down below in the description. But he commented saying no Saw. I wish I would have seen it when I filmed that video, because it would have definitely been there. I pretty much have given a lot of spoilers in this video, so I might as well say it, but the fact that John Kramer is right there the entire time, oh my god, it's so crazy. Like, it's so insane. It just shows how crazy this guy is. I also really like the way this story is told, because since we are stuck in this one location and these characters don't know each other, at times it could feel like they're giving us a lot of exposition, but I think the way it's written is really clever, because it feels like they're having like a genuine conversation about it. And it's really shocking too, because we don't really know these characters, so we're learning from what they're telling each other, and as we see in the movie, they sometimes lie or keep information that would change the other's opinion of themselves. I think this movie is really cleverly written, and it's also terrifying. Like, I think this movie is really scary, and the fact that it doesn't even have as many crazy traps as the other ones shows a lot. Also, one of my favorite things that this movie does is that we get to see a certain scene multiple times, and it's really cool because it goes to show that perspective thing, because like I said before, we're really getting everything from these two characters, Adam and Dr. Gordon, and we don't even know if we should trust these people because we don't know anything, just like these characters don't know anything. We're kind of just thrown into the situation with them, which I think is a really interesting touch that James Wan did. And I like how, for example, Dr. Gordon says one thing, but then we get the perspective of Adam's scene of the same scene that Dr. Gordon talked about, and it's really interesting. It just shows how much perspective can change anything, and I think perspective is really important in this movie. I don't think any of the other ones beat this one because I think this one's the best one, and it's crazy what this series turned into because I think the other movies are so different than the first one. But yeah, that about does it for my Saw ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys don't hate me if you're a diehard Saw fan and you just saw me criticize a bunch of Saw movies. If you haven't already, please make sure to comment down below your Saw ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and yeah, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your week, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys!